Hello everyone, my name is Gauthier. I'm a French Android developer working at Happen, which is a mobile dating application based on geolocation data. I am an aspiring software craftsman, which basically means my team and I, we care to write tested software we can be proud of. But most of all, I am happy to be here to talk about the 2015 Android Developer Toolbox. So I know what you're thinking already. We are in December, the year is over, is soon. 2015, the year is almost, the talk is almost outdated. Well, I cannot predict the future, but I can pretend to. So let's say this talk will also be okay for 2016. So future is now. Let's talk about the 2016 Android Developer Toolbox. So why am I talking about a toolbox? Why do we even need a toolbox? Well, this is a picture of me recently in front of a huge legacy application, and I had to maintain that, seriously. And I quickly learned that I was not prepared at all for that. The tools I had at that time were simply not suitable enough. I had to use the right tools for the right job, not only to gain productivity, but also to improve the overall quality of my work. And I took some of these tools that help me daily to share them with you today. I could not take them all. We don't have enough time for that, and obviously I'm not strong enough to carry that much. But I took some, and I sorted them into 3 categories: measuring tools, testing tools, and analyzing tools. And we'll start with measuring tools, which are really, really important. So there's a golden rule, and you should know it. You do not optimize without measuring first and after. It's super important. But you know, there's even a better rule, shinier than the golden rule, which is you do not optimize at all. And this is the best rule. If you want to optimize something, just don't do it, unless you really need to. But if you need to optimize, just measure first to make sure you really need to optimize, and measure after to confirm what you did has a positive impact on the project. If what you did has a positive impact, then keep what you wrote. But if not, just throw it away. Don't keep something useless just because you spent time writing it. And I saw a lot of junior developers who made useless optimization, like to save 0 milliseconds, just because when they saw some code in their imagination, what they did, they thought that the code was very costful in terms of execution time. So they did a lot of optimization, like adding some maps, complexifying the code base for no reason. So it's completely insane. What you should do is you should not be controlled by your imagination, at least for rational things in your work, but you should mostly focus and measure first and after to know if what you did has whether or not a positive impact on the project. And the first tool to measure, you know it all, it's Android Studio, which gives us the possibility to measure the CPU, GPU, network, and memory usage. If you want to start the memory measuring tools, you start Android Studio, you click on the Android Monitor tab at the bottom of the screen. And you can see here 2 memory graph analysis, before and after optimization. You can see some gaps on the second screen, which means that before we were not freeing memory at all, which is completely crazy. And we start to free some, which is a little better. So here I measure first, and I can confirm after. I measure first, I saw it was a mess. I measure after, I can notice that what I did has a positive impact on my project. Great news, in Android Studio 2, you have a better emulator, and you have instant run for faster build and run. I've been using Jaribel for Android for some time, and it was completely impressive. It made me save a lot of time, so I hope it's great. Android Studio cares for that, the team, and I hope we will all use faster build and deploy soon. If we need to measure the frame rate, which means in how many frames per second your application is running, you can use the TAC library, which is a very easy library to install. You just need a few lines, 1 line in your build.gradle file and a few lines in your application class. What it does basically is it displays the number of FPS. So here I will start an application, which is a DroidCon application. I can see live the number of FPS, and if there is a gap, I can measure. It helps me to measure first to see. I will start an activity. I can see if there is a drop in terms of frame rate. I can see mostly it's 60 FPS, so it's great. So if you need to measure the FPS, just use TAC. It's just a few lines of code, and you can do it. It's great. And as a reminder, if you want your method to run smoothly in 60 frames per second, you need each frame should take less than 16 milliseconds to compute. So basically, everything you wrote on the UI thread must not take more than 16 milliseconds to compute to keep a stable 60 FPS. And to know easily the duration of your methods, you can easily call manually the system.currentTime millis before and after calling the method. Or you can better use the Hugo Gradle plugin that does that for you. You just prefix either a class or an annotation with that debug log, and you can see directly how long did every method took, like his init logger took 1 millisecond, init graph 16, and onCreate 71, which is a little too much. If to see your application logs, I strongly recommend you to use Speedcat, which is a colored light command line output that helps us to filter per package name, and it's really more clear to read logs like that. So you can use Speedcat with Hugo, and you can see the logs directly. And personally, I often have an open Speedcat running. So when I do some development, I always have a terminal. I write Speedcat, I keep the terminal, and I can always see the logs like that. I'll stop talking about some perf measuring tools. I know some people care a lot for that. But others would rather say that quality is far more important. And to measure the quality of your application, you can use some code static analysis tools. You have a bunch of choices available. You have Lint, PMD, Checkstyle, FindBuzz, and the latest Facebook Infer. You should use Lint, really. It's really helpful as it can prevent some crashes, warning you when some calls that cannot run on low APIs. I will share the slides later. You don't need to take picture. I will share later. You can if you want. But I strongly recommend you to use SonarQube, which gives us an overview of the overall complexity and technical debt of our project. As a reminder, the technical debt is a metaphor. When we write some code, we unintentionally add bugs, and the more we write code, the more we have possible bugs. SonarQube is a tool that helps us to locate the bugs and help and tell us, give us some insights and tell us how we can fix some of the issues. We can see here a SonarQube analysis of an Android application. So what you do if you want to run SonarQube, you just need it's a Gradle task. You just launch Gradle SonarQube, and then you can see an overview of your application. This app has almost 30,000 lines of code, 2% duplication, which is crazy. The technical debt is the 35 days, which means if I want to fix all the issues in my application, it would take me like 35 days, not adding features, but just fixing the existing, the actual problems in my application. Of course, you should not trust these tools 100% because they sometimes give you false positive warnings. But most of all, and especially if you're a young developer, it's really helpful and it can help you a lot. Consider it as your friend that can tell us, hey, you made a mistake here. Here is how you should fix it. So here I made an analysis, and it tells me that I wrote a method that returns an array list, and it's not really good because what matters is the contract, not the implementation. So I should actually return in my method a list instead of an array list because in this case, I don't care the implementation. I just want to have something that respects the list interface. Sometimes you may want to return an array list. It may be a false positive. In this case, it was not. And good thing is you can also have an history of your application per version. So you should really check these metrics every time. If you're implementing the Scrum Agile framework, you can do it at the end of each sprint. Otherwise, you can do it, for example, at the end of just before each release. So you can have an overview and see if the quality improves or not. Ideally, you should automate it through a continuous integration tool such as Jenkins. And to install a SonarQube server, you have a lot of ways to do it. You can either use Homebrew if you're on a Mac, and you can do a brew install SonarQube. I prefer to use Docker for that because here is my own Docker file. I'll share the slides so you will have it. Advantage in using Docker is if I want to work on a machine that is, for example, when I'm in my work, I'm using this computer, but when I'm in home, I use a totally different computer, and I don't especially want to install something on this computer, so I can just launch my Docker file, create a Docker process and a Docker container, And another good thing is that you can just share your Docker file with your coworkers, and they can just set up a server directly with no need to configure anything. To configure SonarQube, you just need to add a little Gradle configuration. Here is mine. Basically, what you need to do is you need to specify your Android project, then the address of the SonarQube server, the sources, and the Jacoco output if you want some unit test code coverage. If you're interested in code quality, you have a talk later today about that. Now let's talk about some testing tools. Most of our apps communicate with a web server. And when you want to test something, you want to specify the expected result. It's like a given when then. And the then should always be the same according to the given. But when you're testing a server, the result may differ. For example, two identical queries to get a list of tweets may give two different results depending on if some people tweeted or not during the execution time of the two queries. So it's actually a little complicated to test a server because for the same input, for the same query, you may have a different output. And if you want to test your app, you need to make sure the answer stays the same. For that, you can either inject a fake data provider in your debug dependency graph, in a debug build variant. For example, you can create a Gradle build variant like debug, and in debug or mock, it will preload a JSON file with everything instead, and this data provider will return the JSON file instead of the database, or instead of the network call. But better, you can use a mock server, and this is the approach I prefer because it does not alter the application code that much. A mock server is a fake server that gives always the same result for a given query. And here, when you query a list of tweets, it will actually always return the same list of tweets, which is obviously not good for production, but which is great to test. Especially if you're using, if you are using Espresso to do some instrumentation test, and this really helps you for that because you always can assert the result of the network of the server. And you have a lot of ways to create a mock server. You can check on internet, choose the solution you prefer. I personally like to use Node.js and Express because you can create a mock server in a few lines of code. Like here, it's like 16 lines of code. What you need to do is you need to set up the server. Then if somebody queries /API/users, the server will return the content of the data/users.json file. So here in 4 lines, I created a web service. And I can put my other web service in the same file. And of course, I created the data/user.json file, which has the data I really expect. And then you put this block to start a server. So the advantage in using Node.js and Express is that you can create a mock server really, really easily. And since it's JavaScript, you can custom the answers depending on some queries parameter if you have the need. For example, if you want to have two different answers for example, user/1 and user/2, you can just do /API/user/:1 or :user ID, and then you can use a user ID variable. So it's JavaScript, it's easy to script, and it's easy to configure. Some examples, if you're interested, you need to do npm install to install the dependencies. You only need to do that once, and then nodeserver.js to start the web server. Once again, you can plug the Node.js server in a Docker container file if you want. And to plug the mock server, you need to make a small Gradle configuration. So I have two product flavors. I have a production flavor, which is my production endpoint. And here I have, if I use a mock flavor, it will use my mock server. And if you want to select your build variant, it's in Android Studio there. And if you really don't want to alter the source code of your application and the Gradle configuration, you can also modify the IP associated to a host name using host editor. So basically what you do is this endpoint, for example, droidcon.pl, instead of referring to the actual IP, it can refer to a local IP in your development machine. Next, I'll talk about a software you should really have in your toolbox, which is an HTTP debugging proxy tool. So you can use either man-in-the-middle proxy, which is free as in freedom. It's a command line tool written with the Ncurses library. You can couple it with some tools like TC, traffic control, or ATC, augmented traffic control, if you want to simulate a low network connection. So basically what you can do is you can run TC on your machine to simulate a low connection, and then you can use a man-in-the-middle proxy on your machine, which will make a proxy between your computer and your phone. And every time you will query something, it will query the proxy first. The proxy will query the actual network server, but since you have augmented traffic control, or you have a traffic control, the query will slow down a little. You may also want to use Fiddler, which has a graphical interface. It's free to use, but not as free as in Freedom. And you can also use a Charles Proxy, which is a solution I personally prefer. Problem is that you have to pay once to use it. It's not a free software. But I will just show you some example using Charles Proxy, and I will show you how it tells me daily. You don't have to use Charles if you prefer. You can use other solutions. So when you are developing an application that communicates with an HTTP server, you often have the following need. You may want to simulate a laggy or unstable connection. You may want to repeat some queries to check the responses, or you want to add some breakpoints to some queries to cancel an HTTP call, edit a request, or edit a response. If I want to add a breakpoint with Charles, I just need to do a right-click, select breakpoints, and then the next time my phone will make a query, I will have the possibility to alter either the request, either the response. On this video, I will cancel a request to test that I made it's an application in French, but I made an infinite scrolling. And the problem with the infinite scrolling is sometimes it's difficult to test, because you may want to determine what can happen if, for example, the network breaks during the infinite scrolling. So here I want to display a retry button. So what I do is I have my infinite scrolling. I add a breakpoint. I can abort the request. If I abort the request, I can see easily that my request failed and the retry button is showing. I will try again. So the button is working well. And then I will not modify the query. I will execute it. And the infinite scrolling is working. So you can really easily test an infinite scrolling or other things with HTTP debugging proxy. Here, I will modify a server response the same way using breakpoints. So I will start my application. I'm at the breakpoint. I will execute the request. But what I want is I will edit the answer. And I can, here is a XML service, not clear. But I can just modify the answer. I will write something, and I will have the answer directly on my phone. Why it's important is because sometimes you may want to test something easily, and it may be complicated. For example, sometimes I have some people in the backend team that ask me, hey, if I return null in this field instead of the normal data, will your application crash or not? Or sometimes they ask me, if I return a HTTP 400 instead of 200, will your application work as expected? So sometimes when it's an application I'm maintaining it, I can read the source code, and I usually read the source code. But sometimes when it's like spaghetti shape, it takes a lot of time to understand. So what I usually do is I test on a real case. So if I have people from the backend team that ask me, hey, if I return null in this JSON, will it work or not? What I do is I just sit here and we try it, and it usually takes us like less than 2 minutes to try. So it really helps us to save a lot of time. Last category, analyzing tools. Let's talk about some developers options. I hope you all use them to inspect your layouts, especially the show layout bounds option. Very useful when we need to understand some layouts. If you want to place every component in the same in the right place, and sometimes you miswrite in your XML and you don't understand why, you can just toggle the developer option, show layout bounds, and then you will see clearly and understand better. You can also probably use a debug GPU overdraw. The darker the color is, the longer it takes time for the GPU to draw pixels that it may have to draw it several times, depending on how many containers you have. Twitter, you can see, is pretty well written in terms of overdraw, because in the tweets part, you have like no overdraw at all. It's like a custom views I made, and it's really, really optimized. So you can just debug GPU overdraw if you want to measure that. Surprisingly, they don't do everything well in Twitter. You can see the search screen, everything is red, which means they fail somehow. But it's very funny to see the difference between a very well-crafted tweet layout and this layout. Many people use a hierarchy viewer to analyze layouts. It may be useful for you. Here I want to analyze a layout to make sure I don't have any useless view groups. So I just export an environment variable, and then I can run ./monitor. Still a little slow to start. I select my activity. And then I can have an overview of the hierarchy. I can check every view groups. It can help me to know the drawing times, the measure times, and the layout times. So here it's I have a preview of my view group. Here is a recycler view that contains many items. I have one item which is here, and then this item is composed of actually an image, which is in my frame layout container. I have an image which is a cover album, and I have another frame layout which is the text. So here I may not need a frame layout. For example, I can just make a text view directly, but it can really help you to check the view hierarchy. And of course, the less view groups you have, and the less the system will take time to measure, layout, and draw. To simplify bugging, you can also use custom properties solely visible by the hierarchy viewer. If you prefix a field by @viewDebug, when you use a hierarchy viewer, you can directly check the content of the field. It may be useful for you, but I will show you a little later a much better way to interact with your application in real time. I don't use a hierarchy viewer a lot, as I prefer to use a UI automation viewer personally. It's a tool already installed in your Android SDK. Here, you basically need to open the tool, make a snapshot, and then you can view your hierarchy easily. You can select the views, and here it's an example of the Twitter stream. You can see they just have a custom view. Here they have a custom view with a frame layout, which is like everything, and they draw the text directly in this custom view. So they really made well, and I think for accessibility, this kind of layout is very well made. Now let's talk about some animations. When I do some animations, sometimes I have glitches, and it's quite difficult to understand the glitches because usually the animation runs a little too fast. What you can do to make them a little slow is you can increase the animation scale. Better, what you can do is you can make a screencast with ADB Shell. You can make a screencast to record the video, and then you can run it with VLC, and you can press E multiple times, and every time you press E, you can check the next frame. So here, if you want to debug an application, it's really easy. You just make a screencast, then you press E multiple times on VLC, and you can check frame by frame. And if there is any glitch, you can check easily. Next, decompiling tools. If you feel the need to analyze the security of your application, you can decompile it using APKtool, Dex2Jar, and Java Decompiler. By the way, I think the original creator of APKtool is from Poland, I think. So you guys are doing great software. It's great. You know that the code within your application is available by everyone. So basically, you should make sure you don't write anything critical, like a password. I saw some application with a FTP password embedded in the application in code. And if you want to analyze the security of your application, you can just decompile it. The good thing is that it's very easy to do with these tools. You can just APKtool D for decompile, and the APK, then you can check the DEX file. You can transform the DEX file in a jar file. And this is a decompiled application. You can see the source code is like human readable very easily. And the funny thing is that I even think I use ProgRead in this application. To analyze an APK, there's even a better solution now, which is called JEDEX. It's just a tool. You just need to press open, select the APK, and you can directly have access to the source code, check the resources, and check the content of your application really easily. You have also Classy Shark, made by some people at Google who can help you for that. I really like to use JEDEX. But you know, decompiling is not only for security. It's also to help you think or improve your application. For example, I decompiled my application recently because I wanted to know how many ProGuard optimization paces I should do. When you are making a release build with ProGuard, you can select how many times ProGuard will run. But the problem is when you do that, it takes a lot of time because ProGuard takes a lot of time to compute everything, to optimize, to obfuscate the source code. And what's the default configuration is you can let ProGuard optimize until it finds nothing to optimize. But it's like it takes for him like 8 paces, optimization paces. And what I did is I need a compromise between the obfuscation and the time to make a release. So what I did is I made many optimization passes and I decompiled my application. And for each pace of ProGuard optimization, what I did is I made a diff with obfuscate source code. And when I found a good ratio, I just between obfuscation over time spent, I just kept it like that. So you can use decompiling not only for security but for many different things. So this is just an overview. You have a talk tomorrow about secure development with Android. I have some time to talk about the tool I appreciate the most currently, which is Steto, made by Facebook. Steto is a tool that allows you to inspect your application from the Google Chrome browser. Just like when you are doing some web development and you want to see the document object model, Steto is a tool you embed in your APK, and you can use then the Chrome developer tools to analyze your application in real time. So what you need to do is you connect your phone via USB to your computer, you start Chrome with the URL chrome://inspect, and you can inspect your app. For instance, here I will inspect the layout of my application. The device in the left is an actual device connected to USB. So what I do is I turn on Chrome, I go to the Chrome inspect URL, I inspect this application, and if I click on the magnifier glass and then I touch a part in my application, I can directly see a hierarchy of my application. I can see the ID very easily. For example, if you need to modify a layout a little and you want to check what is the ID of this view instead of checking the source code, you just start Chrome and you can just click on your phone and you can see directly the hierarchy. You also have a mirroring option. It's really nice to use. But you have also other features in Steto. You have a network tab to analyze your application network call and inspect the requests and answers. I'm going on the network tab, then I will start again my application, and I can see every queries directly in Google Chrome. Of course, I can just click on them. Here I have 404 on the image. It's not a big deal. So every query I can inspect directly using Google Chrome. And I can have the headers, HTTP headers. I can preview the requests and answers. Finally, a really useful tab, the Resources tab, that lets you see and modify in real time the persisted data of your application. So here in my application, I'm clicking on the Resources tab, and I have some shared preference, and I can modify them in real time. For example, if I toggle a shared preference, I can modify some other thing, and I restart my application. It will start in a completely different mode, because when it starts, it checks some preferences. So the advantage of Steto is you can modify live your shared preferences. You don't need to add a debug, breakpoint, or anything. And you can also see the content of your SQLite database. So I can see my tables in real time. If I want to make sure my imports made was performing well, I can just check directly. I can even query the database directly using Google Chrome. What you need to do is you need a device connected to USB, and then you start Google Chrome and you can interact and modify live data on your application. Last but not least, Dump App. Dump App is a great Python tool bundled within Stator that lets you interact with your application. This time not only using the Google Chrome browser, but using a command line interface. And this tool, I use it daily, and it helps me a lot to maintain the Appen dating application. And I will show you some actual use cases. If you have the possibility, you should definitively try to use it, or at least give it a try. I use it almost every day now. Let me explain first, because it will be a little quite complicated to understand. So I still have my phone connected to USB to my computer. I started a terminal, and if I write dump app, I can see multiple options. These multiple options are options I created myself. So I made a Java plugin within my debug application, and if I write dump app space access token space show, I can directly see the access token in my application. It's very useful, for example, if you are doing some OAuth authentication and you want to make sure the access token is reset up, what you can do is you can add a breakpoint in Android Studio, and you can evaluate the expression and check the access token. Better, you just use your application normally, you start a terminal, you write dump app space access token space show, and you can see directly your access token. Better, if I want to invalidate my access token anytime, I write dump app space access token space invalidate, and my access token will be like invalidated. So it's very useful, because if I want to test like the refresh token works well, I can use my application, and anytime I use a terminal, I invalidate my access token, I start a query, and I make sure the query failed. I made another query to request an access token, and I have the actual answer. If I write dump app space connected user, I can see my connected users data. For example, I'm connected to the Appen application. I want to see my ID. I just start a terminal and write that. I can see my device ID, my geolocation. I can open an intent if I want to open a screen instead of, you can use ADB, it's great for that. You can also use a dump app, create your own plugin and open an intent. Profile data, if I want to see data of the current user I'm watching. For example, it's a dating application. I see a lot of user activities, and if I want to see the JSON which was used to lay out the activity, I just write dump app space profile data, and I can see the memory, the objects which are actually in the memory in my application. I can simulate some GCM pushes, and I can see my running services. So I will, let's see a video now. So I write dump app / push crush. I will simulate a push notification. I write enter. I receive a push directly. I click on my notification. So this person is interested. I can communicate with her. What I will do is I will check what is my current OAuth access token. It's this, okay. I will maybe open a user profile with my terminal. Then I will just invalidate my access token. I will open another intent. I expected my access token to be refreshed at that time. And I can check the running services and my geolocation data right now, where I am currently. So it's really, really easy to use when you are developing your application. You just open a terminal and you interact with your application easily. Good thing is that to create a plugin, it's really, really easy. So yeah, if I write dump app space test, the output will be hello world. So to do that, you only need to, you have the content of the arguments, the command name. So then it's just a basic if-else. If the command name equals to test, then out.println hello world. If you want to do the same as me, which is display my access token, what I can do is I can inject in a dependency graph my access token or a container of my access token, and if access token equals command name out.println container.get access token. So in 5 lines of code, you can create your first dump app plugin. Remember the plugin I created to display data from the current user display on my phone? For example, when I write dump app profile data, and I can see that the data actually visible is his age is 28, the name is Stefan, and he's an Android dev. It was the trickiest plugin I had to make using dump app, but it's still quite easy. I will just show you an example and try to think that this is maybe one of the most complicated. You will have to do it. So what if I want to display data in my activity or in my fragment? What I should do is I should first get access to a reference of my activity. So I created an activity provider only injected in a debug graph that always keeps an instance of my current activity. It's not really good to do that in release, of course, yet it's null when the activity is paused. But you can just make a debug build variant, and only in debug you can always keep an instance of your current activity. Then now I have an instance of my current activity. I try to get it. If my activity is a profile activity, I just use some reflection to access the muser field, or the user field, which is an object that contains my user data. And I can just use JSON to pretty print the object and create a JSON. So I can just write .println to display the output of my user. I could also make it easier with a get user instead of using reflection. I don't care using reflection because this is only in debug build, and I don't want to modify the visibility of my application just to test something. That's why I use a reflection, but you can use a getter if you think it's more convenient for you. And that's all. So this plugin and profile data was really easy to make finally. If you want to see a real implementation, you can clone the DroidCon app PL. I just modify the DroidCon app to use some of the tools I show you today. So I'm using a mock server with fake data. I implement the app, so you can just clone this, check. I have like 5 commits, and you can see a real implementation if you want. We are almost at the end of the talk. Very quickly, I forgot to talk about some tools which are really important, and I will feel bad if I don't say anything about it. So ADB, of course, very important. Roman will give a talk today. About that, I'll be watching it. DevDrawer, very useful if you are uninstalling your application every time. Here, it's a widget. You can just, every time an application is installed, you can see it here. You can uninstall it quickly and modify the data. You don't need every time to, when you run your application, to open the pages, application page and scroll if you have multiple applications. You always have a link of your application, always visible on a widget. Visor lets you see and control your actual Android device in real time. When you saw the videos with a device at the left and a terminal, for example, I was using Visor. You can use an emulator. A good thing is you can just see your device in your computer connected to USB, and it's quite fast, and you can interact with your computer. If you click, then it has an interaction on your device. Leak Canary, a wonderful library if you want to detect memory leaks in your application. You should really try it if you haven't yet. Genymotion is what the Android emulator should be or will be. It has a lot of interesting features. They have a stand here, they have a booth. Postman is a Chrome plugin that is very helpful if you want to test some REST call. It's just a Chrome plugin, and you can just specify the URL and you can see the answer. If you want, if you are using REST a lot, it's very convenient. You can use curl too, but to pass an access token or modifying header, it's a little more complicated. AirDrag and Pushbullet if you want to share text between your application and your computer. And Lokito if you want to simulate a geolocated ride. For example, in the App and Dating application, when you move around the city, you may cross different person. And when I'm developing, I'm staying in my office, so I cannot actually simulate a ride. I cannot make a ride. So here I simulate a ride, and then it's very easy to test geolocation and geolocated data if you're using geolocation. And View Inspector, a Gradle plugin that uses Scalpel and Probe to analyze your layouts and views. Finally, if you haven't done it, just check out U2020 source code. It's like the best example if you want to use Dagger, a dependency injection library. And if you want to create some, to inject some objects only in a debug build variant, for example, you can check the source code. And last, a fresh tool release yesterday, a method count, which is both a website and an IntelliJ plugin. And if you don't want to use a multidex, and if you want to see how many methods are in each library, you can see here the AppCompat is 5,000 methods. It was released yesterday, and the message is you have tools every time. Tomorrow you will have other tools, so it's actually you have a lot of choice available. So as a conclusion, I shared with you some of the tools I use daily. The message I want to pass is just to simply choose according to your needs and tastes. All these tools help me to write better code and to be more productive. And your toolbox may be completely different from mine, and that's fine. You may prefer Systrace, Poe, ClassicShark, TraceView, LayoutCast. The idea here is to take some time, if you haven't done it yet, to create your own toolbox, selecting tools from the internet or creating your own tools if you feel the need to. So now you understand how wrong was this talk title. It was not actually the developer toolbox, but an example of a developer toolbox. And I'll finish on this less appealing but more accurate title. You can follow me on Twitter. I'll share the slides, the source code, and I'll be glad to answer a few questions if we have time. Otherwise, feel free to talk to me during the talk.